Yeah, thank you for taking the time to have a conversation. I have to say something though before we start. This is really special because when I first started going on YouTube and like just checking stuff out on YouTube, and of course, you know me, I'm all into astral projection and out of body experiences and all that kind of stuff, obviously. So when I first started getting on YouTube, I was like, oh, let me search astral projection, and guess who came up? You came up. You were one of the videos. So remember, I think you have some videos from like several years ago, 8, 10, over 10 years ago. I don't know how many years ago it was, to be honest with you, but maybe 10 years ago, where you started talking about your experiences, your own experiences, and vlogging them, And then it was neat too, because then there was this like YouTube presence, and I was able to actually see how there's other people around the country, around the world, who are also having these kinds of experiences. Some people start having them when they're adults, and some people just have them from when they're little, or like from like 10 or 15 or whatnot. So that was really, really cool. So this is really interesting. I never thought that in the future I'd be sitting here and doing a Zoom meeting, a Zoom video with Casey. So this is really special. And I like how you have that the secondary. I think you have two different channels, correct?
Well, let me start here. When I came onto YouTube, it was in 2009. And that's when my awakening happened. So
okay.
there's different, there's various legs of the journey. And so, there's experiences that start when you're younger and, mid-aged, and then however old you are when you pop. And when I popped, this body was 44. The year was 2009. And I came out onto YouTube to start talking about the out-of-body experience, galactic space, extraterrestrial contact. Prior to that, I come from spiritual disciplines. I came on as Om KC1, and that's how most people know me. That was when the most people connected with me. And then Om KC1, I changed the name to the Galactic Travel Channel when my service came online, and the crystals that's involved in part of my service. And then I got the secondary channel. Yes, I came out as myself with my my name, so people can now know me.
So there's a lot of people out there who are just like us, but there's only like a certain percentage of people who are willing to actually take the time and the energy and just get the information and the personal experiences out, and share with other people and whatnot. Because where I really resonate with some of your information and your videos is as soon as you started explaining how this astral realm, these other realms are actually galactic. I mean, they're out in space. It's like you sit down in your lawn chair and look out at the stars with your physical eyes, and you don't see any of that. You just see what this reality construct we call Earth, what it's somewhat told us to believe it is, or what is programmed us to believe what it is, through our visual perspective, through our human senses. But it's all there, and it's just the larger reality system is just so mind-boggling. I want to ask you, when you first started having these experiences and understanding this, how did you like cope with it? How did you deal with it internally? How did you process it? When it first started happening, do you remember how it was for you when that time happened?
This would depend on what juncture of the process you come in at. So if you come in at the beginning, then the processing was easy. I wasn't, although I experienced everything I experience now from the beginning. What's different now is the level to which I cognize it with my conscious state of awareness. So when I was younger, I wasn't let to be aware that I was different from anyone else. And the way that happened was by, well, in my personality construct, I'm a loner. It was an imperative and a need to be by myself. So I was in my 40s before I was even talking to people. And I mean, about anything. I mean, even the years when I was in school, I didn't have friends that I hung around and talked to. You know, we used to play games, hide and seek and stuff like that and have fun, but we didn't talk. And if there were, and I sort of knew that I wasn't meant to talk, you know, what had come out of my mouth would have caused me difficulty. So years and decades of hermiting, you know, and meditation and walking out in the middle of the desert alone, and digging underground forts and sleeping outdoors under the sky, under the stars. You know, I come from a big family, but even still, you know, no talking.
Were your parents or any of your siblings or any relatives also into having out of bodies and doing astral projection, meditation, that kind of thing, or was it just you?
Not that I knew of then. Yeah, but later. So I would say the way my physical construct handled it when I popped. So when I was 44 years old, and I have what I call my awakening. And what I mean by awakening is, prior to an awakening, you're going back and forth between physical reality and physical reality stuff and spiritual stuff. You know, you're going back and forth. When you pop, you're no longer going back and forth. It's all one, it's all at once, it's constant, it's steady, it's not going away anymore. There's no break from it. There's no running or hiding from it.
Yeah, there's no turning back. Yes.
When you pop, you're in all the waves all at once. And yeah, it was one of the biggest kerpow moments for me was when I realized that what we call the astral is galactic space. So that I hadn't seen it that way, you know, prior. I also don't have a lot of preconceived notions. So the way I process information is maybe different from the way that most others process information, because they're very associated with, most people need to be around other people. And there's a lot of interaction and a lot of exchange of information and thoughts and ideas and perceptions. With me, there was none of that. So there was not that exchange of information. And on top of that, you know, I was raised without a television set. So there was no news, you know, no newspaper, you know, because I'm older. No television, you know, none of that. There was no exchange of information. So what's coming to me is coming to me. It's you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of how it was for me too, in a way, because I mean, I'm 41 right now, and I didn't even have my first computer till I was like 19. You know, I mean, I'm like right at that cutoff where, you know, like my senior year in high school, which was 1998, and our high school just started to introduce like computer courses and, you know, and bring computers in as a computer class and whatnot. And so I didn't really have access to the internet or do anything till I was like, you know, 18, 19 years old or so.
You were 18, 19, and I was 42. So you didn't get very long in your life before, you know what I mean? So that's a part, and that's an information exchange system, of course. I was much older when that happened, and much older than that before I started using the computer as a way to access information. So I was only 2 years on the internet when I popped. You asked how I handled that when that happened. And
Yeah,
so
exactly. Your process on that. Yeah, mental
I'll
process.
go from that point right there in this body's 44th year. What happened was my central nervous system went into shock. Utter shock. Yeah. Just my whole body trembled all the time for a year, year and a half, almost 2 years. It took me about 2 years to get through the initial central nervous system shock. Yeah, it didn't stop me from going out of body, of course. As soon as that happened, mine was a Kundalini Awakening. So I come from spiritual circles, meditation circles, yogic disciplines, the ancient scriptures, the Indian scriptures and texts, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedas, so that was my line in. And where I most aligned was with a man by the name of Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya was somebody who was an exponent of liberation within a lifetime. So when I'm reading these texts, it doesn't make sense to me that duality is all there is, that's for sure. And it doesn't make sense to me that you have to wait until the moment of death to be liberated.
Yes, exactly.
None of that made, I didn't align there. I aligned with absolutely liberation within a lifetime. And so that was the bent that my life was sort of flowing along. So it doesn't surprise me that this happened. At that point, I'd been meditating for, many decades.
Yeah. I see. You kind of you definitely worked your way into it. It's not like you were just.
It was a process.
Driving your car, and then just has some kind of spontaneous OBE or anything.
It was happening all along. It was happening all along. What changes is the depth and degree to which you consciously, with your conscious awareness, cognize what's happening.
Yeah.
So
the memory factor too, the downloading of the memories.
I would find myself in 360 vision a lot. This is an example. I was a dreamer starting from the get-go. I was a person who loved my bed. Everything that happened for me and my world that I loved happened there.
Yeah.
But I didn't cognize why, not when I was younger. Even though I knew I dreamed and I loved that sensation of consciously being aware in that state. I didn't cognize that was what was happening because I had no differential. I didn't have a lot of knowing that other people didn't do this, that life wasn't like this for anybody else. So it's like there was no torque, and so the degree to which it impacted me cognitively was very slight, only very slight. And you mentioned the crystal and you mentioned seeing, and that was the very first thing with me was my sight. I don't see in a normal way, even with my eyes. I don't see physical objects first the way that most people do. And it took me a long time to realize this. It took me a long time talking with people to understand that the way that I saw with my physical eyes was very different than the way that they were seeing with their physical eyes. And this moves into, the discussion between a lot of out-of-body experiencers, meditators, between the OBE and lucid dream, also how differently each can get experience. It's not that a lucid dream is one thing and an OBE is another thing. They are one thing, perceived and cognized and chosen to be understood in particular and different varying ways. And this is the part that gets by most people.
They're both forms of astral projection in my mind, though. It's just like
astral projection is just another word for OBE.
Consciousness shifting, consciousness shifting, conscious awareness shifting into another body or into a dream body or whatever the case may be. But I made a couple of videos over the last year or so about how how we're already in the state of astral projection. We're already in essence, we're kind of like our consciousness and souls already astrally projecting into this human body, because when you think about it, since we are this energy and can move from body to body, experience in different planes. It's not that everyone's always just reincarnating back into some kind of physical plane. But again, we use these words like physical plane, astrals, this, that. I think really what it is just a lot of different planes of experience, different planes of consciousness. I don't think we really understand just how many different planes there possibly may be. I'm sure that there are planes that I've never run into and never experienced. Again, my perspective on it is a little different. When I talk to people about dimensional theory, I kind of like the way I explain it is there's, we're on this plane that we call physicality, but from my out-of-body experiences, I've concluded, at least for my own self, not telling other people what to believe, it's just my own spiritual belief structure, is there's this etheric layer that's actually below our physical plane, below this plane we're on now, and then there's another etheric layer that enmeshes onto which is above this physical plane, but it's also within this physical plane. And then that's when I experience, after that is when I experience like what people call like the lower astral planes. Those first couple planes of lower astral, where there's a lot of duality, there's a lot of different reality constructs, there's really heavenly constructs, there's really hellish constructs, there's really addiction based constructs, like drug addiction, sex addiction, those kinds of energies. And then once I get past those first couple astral planes, then I get into this place where like duality seems to, it's still there, but there's more like positive beings, there's more positive reality constructs. And then after that is this whole Akashic plane, Akashic records, access to that data in that other individual plane. And then after that, it seems like every time I go above that into those upper higher astral planes, the idea of duality kind of diminishes more and more and more. And the beings become more and more loving and more, how would you say, it's like there's just like certain types of consciousness or beings that are just centered in those higher astral planes, and there's not as much of like the negativity and the hellish stuff that I kind of have run into and seen in those lower astral planes. But what I've also noticed is that that buffer zone, like that etheric plane, which is kind of like almost like a buffer between this physical world and the astral planes, from what I've noticed is there's other ones. There's more etheric planes. It's almost like there's like this void area or a little buffer zone even in between some of those higher up astral planes as you go up. And then also on top of that, when you're on a certain astral plane, like there's these tunnels and slides and all these things going down into like other smaller reality constructs, which I'm just calling subplanes within each of those astral planes. I mean, it's really mind-boggling. There's just so much the overall like structure of, like, as people call the multiverse and all of that kind of stuff, like the overall structure of it all is really intense, very complicated. And then I call mental planes like the really high up astral planes, where the type of beings there have just really, really good control over their thoughts and intentions. And I've never gone past that. But my tendency towards certain types of thoughts, they're not 100% stabilized. So what happens is when I work myself up to those higher planes, it's just like that one little nanosecond where I lose focus of my thoughts, and automatically I get pulled back into a lower astral plane, or I get pulled back into my physical body and then go through that reintegration process. And then you know how that is, where you come back in and you really can't move your body. You know, you're totally aware and conscious of everything. And it takes like, for me, it takes 30 seconds or 60 seconds to actually even start moving like my physical body, foot or my hand. And then all of a sudden I start like getting into that 100% reintegration with the human body. But
I like your idea that you hit on. The way that you phrased it was speaking of an etheric bandwidth below each of the dimensions or frequencies. And I would say that I see this in an extremely similar way, in that there are frequencies and there are harmonics of frequencies. So a frequency would be the first dimension. A harmonic of frequencies would be the first, second, and third dimension. And so like when we're in the third dimension, we very clearly can see that we're experiencing also the animal kingdom and plant kingdom. Those are in our world, in our experience. We see them, we interact with them, we blend with them, right? Same thing with the first dimension, the minerals, rocks, you know, et cetera, et cetera. All of those are in our field. And so every dimension greater than one, let's say, experiences the dimensions below it or behind it, or however you want to say. So when we shift from the 3D earth life into the next harmonic over, dimensions 6, 5, and 4, this is where people go when they astral project or go out of body, mostly. And I simply call that galactic space. And this is also physical space. So there's physical and non-physical. There's manifest and non-manifest. There's life and life between life areas. And so you have all of that. And where you have life, manifest life, it's physical, but it's 6D physical over here, and it's 2D physical over here. And so, and these are frequencies, these are frequency bandwidths. And anywhere one frequency comes in contact with another frequency, you have that bleed over. And yes, that bleed over is what I would call an etheric bandwidth space. And when you shift over, you know, especially like when we're consciously going out of body, we notice we hit the void first, because you always, when you shift, go back to scratch. Why? Because we're creating the whole thing. We're manifesting the whole thing. So it's like you get to that blackboard where there's nothing on the blackboard. And
that's true. That's true. But I don't experience the void every time.
Well, you don't cognize that you do, but you do.
That's possible. That's possible because there's many times where it's almost like
the void is the larger reality. This is the part that I'm just going to finish that sentence because I feel like it's so important. The void is the larger reality. There is no reality larger than the void. And so the visual realms, you know, those are created from within the void. Void is scratch. Void is consciousness itself.
I understand that.
And so anytime you shift, you know, you're shifting back into that consciousness itself, and then you're creating, you know, the next location.
I see. I agree. But the only thing though is that when what I'm calling kind of like those real-time out-of-body etheric projections, where you're in that real-time zone, you're popping out of your physical body, you're walking, you're moving around in your bedroom, you can see your physical body behind you. Most times I can register or know right away if I'm having an out-of-body is if I can hear my physical body breathing behind me, you know, and so I'm moving away and I can hear my physical body breathing. And I'm, you know, my body's by itself in the room, you know, there's nobody else there, right? And so that's kind of like the first signal to me. Good. I'm actually out of body in this real time zone astral projection. Where if I go into the kitchen and look at the clock
Mhm.
on the oven or the microwave, I can see it's 4:30 a.m. You know, I could see the time in the real time zone. But when I do have those types of OBEs,
It's
there's
possible.
no void though. So what I mean is, I'll just move around in that real time kind of that other dimensional area or space or etheric realm and do whatever. But then I'll go into a void afterwards sometimes.
You'll cognize the void at that point,
Yeah.
whereas you didn't cognize the void prior. What most people cognize in their experiences are locations, not the shift.
True. What we're familiar with. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the opposite with me. It's the way that it's the same way that I don't see physical things first. I see space first. I see the space inside which everything is, you know, and then I see particles, and I can even go inside particles, and then I might see clusters of particles, and then I might have an understanding of what those particles are composing, like that. And when I go out of body, it's the same way. It's the shift. The whole thing is a shift, by the way. Even when you're in a landing location, that's just a shift, slowed way down.
Yeah, frequency. It's like people call it frequency shifting and all like those kinds of things too. Because I mean you're the auditory, like when you're actually about to get out of your body, like you say pop out or whatnot. You know, you can hear those fluctuations of the noise, the noise of the frequency shift within itself. So like when I'm in my vibrational state, I mean, at least my own perspective is that the vibrational state is actually us feeling and sensing our energy body vibrating more and activating, and then that the energy body is actually creating that vibration up against our human body, not that our physical body is, you know, like vibrating in the state of vibration. It's almost like, yeah, our consciousness is just shifting enough into that vibrational the frequency shift, and it's slowly kind of integrating into these other bodies, all these multiple bodies. And that's a whole other other topic to itself, all these bodies.
You don't even have to bring bodies into it. It's the fascinating thing. And I very rarely do, although the body is fascinating to me. And the concept of body is fascinating to me. I more simply call it torque, or the differential. Yes, there's this frequency and this frequency. And when I shift from this frequency to this frequency, I'm going to feel that differential. And that differential is what we often refer to as the shift, sure. But there's so much more to it. It's fascinating. We should have a conversation sometime just on the shift itself.
Can I ask you a question? So do you primarily have your OBEs more in the evenings or early morning hours when it's still dark outside, or do you have a lot of them during the middle of the day when it's daylight? What would you say your percentages are of the experiences that you've had, like day or night?
They're pretty equal, because again, I came in this for meditation, and so it can happen while I'm just sitting here on my mat on a meditation during the day. I'm a nap person, you know, so that would be a high time for me to have an OBE. The top of the night, I will say that my preference for when I do is that 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. time, because it's more peaceful, it's more harmless, it's more fun. When you go out at the top of the night, this is the hard stuff. This is the stuff that most people are too afraid of to do. Even OBEers, they're like, no, not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because this is the ETs, you know, and this is work that's being done in your biological system, and this is being on craft, this is being operated on, this is being on a table, this is hard stuff. And so there's different types of experiences I notice that I have at different points you know,
Yeah.
and what we would call around the clock.
Yeah, I agree. I very much agree with you so much. It does seem to be like that 4:30 a.m. to like 6 a.m. range for me seems to be very tranquil and peaceful.
Friends, guides,
Yeah.
friends, guides, mostly guidance, it's, yeah.
What I've shared with some people is this, and a lot of people don't understand what I'm saying, but I've noticed that out of all the times I project more at night because usually it is like 3 a.m., 6 a.m. range, 4:30, 5:30, and then I've had some daytime projections. It's kind of harder for me. I don't do naps, and so maybe that's one reason why I'm not as easily prone to have OBs during the day, but I have had my fair share of daytime OBs. But here's the thing, though.
You don't have to nap. You could meditate.
When I do daytime and I go outside of my home, out of body, and I go and look at the sky, what I call the etheric sky, and that's just my thing. I can see the constellations, the galaxies, the planets. I can see everything, even though it's daylight. Now, I've explained that and expressed that to other people, and they really don't know what I'm talking about. I have actually never met anybody. I've never met anybody actually on a personal level, at least, who's also been out during the day and they're looking. It's almost like being out in the high desert, in the middle of the summer. It's midnight, high desert. The sky is perfectly clear. There's little, the humidity's low. There's not many much water molecules in the air, like let's say Oregon, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so pristine and so clear. And it's just like, it's almost like looking at a desert sky in the middle of the summer, but it's just daytime during the projection. I can see everything.
Mhm.
Now, is that just me, or I mean, have you experienced that during
Sure,
your?
I've given you many examples of the way that I experience it. So that would fit right into the ballpark of the reverse perception that I'm talking about, where you're not seeing physical space first, but last.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you're just seeing the larger consciousness space. Easier, you're able to expand into that, and you're also able, of course, in that larger consciousness to see physical space as well. So to you, they appear to be superimposed. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the way that I see. However, I can't say that I'm ever looking at anything when it's just how my sight works.
Yeah, I do think it does vary for people. I think the whole thing is probably actually more complicated.
It's not. It's so simple. It's so simple.
Well, how is that?
Once you have the pattern, you see that all the patterns are the same.
No, what I meant was everyone seems to be like this person or that person. It's like their perspective and how they're explaining their experiences might be similar, but there's like these things that are different,
Right, because they're patterning their attention in the way that they prefer to experience what it is they came to experience. But once you see that perception is a pattern that we are choosing to hold, you understand and are perfectly okay with the fact that other people are holding different other patterns, that there's not just one pattern. But not everybody has grown up to the degree that they can understand and accept and allow there to be more than one pattern, because they're still in a 3D physical earth space construct, thought holding pattern.
Yeah, right? No, I agree.
There's just one reality and it's out there and it's objective. No, yeah. Once reality turns inside out for you, then there's no going back. Then you can see. So if they're not understanding that there's more than the pattern that they're holding, then they haven't popped. And you understand that they're at a certain level of their progression. And, there's a level where you're going back and forth also, it's like, weeks and months, and you're like in this larger one, but then you go back. It's like when you go on a meditation retreat and you get out of city life and away from your job, and you actually get a nice reset. And then you come back into that space and you're like, whoa, okay. And you're getting that differential, and you're understanding, wow, there's something other than, this energetic that happens when I'm working the daily grind and, not having enough time to see to myself, and, millions of things going on, as to when I'm, in a different energy. And basically that's our nervous systems. When we're in our normal living space, most people are in their living out of their sympathetic nervous systems, which we're not designed to do. And getting out of that sympathetic nervous system back into the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest mode. The sympathetic is a fight flight mode. Again, we're not meant to live in, but most of us are, and so how we can be so reactive and responsive. And
do you think that this reality construct makes it that way? Do you think that
I think we all apply our own torque?
I got you. That makes sense, because we're also all
in the way that's fun for us. Not that we're cognizing that it's fun all the time, but we wouldn't be doing it if at the deeper level it wasn't fun for us and we weren't learning what it was that we were attempting to learn. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of us get in those places where you bring in one set of subjects and we can't grow out of it. Something is like weight is one for me. What I mean? Yeah. It's just like, when will I get that one thing? You know what I mean? So like, there's always something, for us. But anyway, that stands in our way. But yes, we're applying our own torque.
It's also what the truth of the matter is that we're all just coming from different places. I mean, we're like the reason why we're in this particular life experience, like our consciousness is I guess more or less centered into this certain life experience, is different for everybody. We're all here for different missions, different experiences. I'm sure that some people just chose or signed up and made a contract just to come to this reality construct, just to experience having a family with 3 kids or something, or 4 kids or 5 kids, just to experience like a family unit and raising a child and doing those kinds of things. There's a plethora of reasons to why we are here. And so one of the things we have to do as individual units of consciousness is we have to, really find ourselves and find what is that mission, and then really kind of focus on our energy on that, and so that we can kind of fulfill our mission more. And so like for me, I know I'm here for a few different reasons. That there is a certain percentage of people here right now in this particular reality we call Earth, who are here just to talk about this stuff and experience it for ourselves and share it and help other people and guide people. I'm sorry,
we've talked about the everything being a process. Mm-hmm. In physical spaces, everything is a process. And so there are people who are at junctures in their process that would qualify as being here on what I would call the learning program.
Yes, I've heard people say
they're
that.
In 3D space for, they entered 3D space and they haven't graduated from it yet. So, they came into the 3D physical body and have never graduated from that curriculum yet. And then there's others of us here who have come into 3D bodies, 3D spaces, and through, however many incarnations it took, graduated from that.
Different processes, yes.
And have now come back to help. So there's those that are here on the learning program, you know, are going to have a very different curriculum. They're meant to do the things that, you know, boggle our mind.
Yes,
until we remember, oh yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, you know, until you graduate and while you're graduating. Yes, but there's a very distinct difference, of course, between those who have never graduated the third grade curriculum yet and those of us who have and have come back to help. Sure. And one of the things that, or basically the only thing to do when you're coming back, is to emit the frequencies of those higher frequency gradients.
that's right. That's right.
Regardless of the way that we do that, you know, that's neither here nor there. However, we, yes, may have specialties.
Yeah, you know, and it's all over the board too, because like some of the people I know, you know, like I was saying earlier, that they have these experiences, but they definitely keep it to themselves. It's almost like there's a part of them that's afraid of ridicule or being judged or whatnot. But see, to me, it's like when you evolve your consciousness and awareness, and you're having these kinds of experiences, and you're on your own spiritual pathway, and you're trying to help other people and help yourself and learn yourself, help other people learn. You cannot have any fear about judgment. You know, you can't have any, you know, worry about what this person may think about you or say about you. You know, I've been, I mean, ever since I started my channel the other year, you know, Consciousness Awake, like, believe me, there's some negativity. Like, there's some, you know, haters and trolls, and, you know, people attacking me, sending weird emails and leaving you know, and it's like, I don't care, you know, I just don't care. I just kind of like.
There's a time, again, everything's process.
Yeah.
And you'll hit a point in the process where it's right to come out. For me, it wasn't right to even begin speaking with other people, not even about physical things, until I was over 40 years old. It was very important that I not. Why was it very? See, I wouldn't say that it's fear. I wouldn't say that it's fear of judgment. I would say it's a built-in survival mechanism. Because if you come out before it's time to come out, if you start trying to talk before what's in you is just bubbling out naturally, then you may increase the length of your stay in 3D because of the confusion that will come from so many other perspectives before you've worked anything out for yourself. So it's really critical that we get our own patterns down. And back to what you were saying, yes, job number one, who am I?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like the mission.
I don't mean as a person. I don't mean as a person. Who am I? You know, get clear.
I don't know why, but I remember coming into this place. I remember where I was before I went through. It was like a train station, and I got on a train, and the train went through a big, huge, I guess what you call portal, and the portal went into Los Angeles, the city of angels. It went right into the LA area, and I remember getting off that train and just roaming around for days. I mean, what seemed like days, and I don't know how long it was, but for a chunk of time, and just roaming around and actually then recognizing the body that I have to go into. I was my human body was 4 years old that time. And I remember going in I just the only problem though is that I don't know. A part of me is just thinking that my physical body was always mine. You know, it was always there, and it was always mine. But the actual, like, centering and full integration of my consciousness into this physical body for this experience just didn't happen when my body was born. It just happened when I was 4 years old. So it's almost like I was going back and forth. So even when I was 1 or 2 or 3, it was still me, but it wasn't 100% integration. And so like that 100% full on integration happened when my body was 4. So some people call that walk-ins. I'm not sure if that's the best way to say it. I think I've actually described it as a walk-in in like one of my videos from like a year ago. But still, there was still a part of me that was still attached, to the human body, because I do believe that, we like pick like our parents. We pick some of the life situations and some of the ordeals and some of the traumatic things that happen in our life. There's like all these different things that we actually pick before this life experience, because there's certain things that we have to work on. It's like we're not coming in just for like one thing, there's multiple things for us to experience and learn from, to get more from the life experience. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, that was going to be my question for you is, do you think that the when people say they walk in, do you think that what I just said was, like a part of me was still connected to that, to my human body before I came into it? Or do you think that there was somebody, possibly I was sharing the body with another consciousness, and then that other consciousness like totally vacated when I went in for a full integration? What's your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, integration into the body is fascinating. And we all integrate into the body differently and at different times.
Okay.
And my full integration with this body didn't happen until only a few years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that what you were experiencing as a walk-in. You hit on a couple fascinating topics for me. The first is this is not my body. Okay, the character of Casey Claar can be played by any consciousness, anywhere, at any time. Okay, but the consciousness cluster that came together, that is here right now, that did finally integrate fully with this body, is what it is. And yes, it's not a single being, and it never is. So one of the reasons there might be for postponing the full integration with the physical body is you haven't chosen all your players yet, or perhaps all of the players, one of them backed out and you had to find another, you know what I mean, to suit the qualifications, of the lifetime, and all kinds of different things can happen. And yes, when those energies finally do conjoin, there can be and is a full integration with the body. However, those beings may not wish to have a full integration with the body, because that would put them wholly in 3D space, meaning absolute mind wipe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I think it's why I had the top-down awakening when I did. I think it's why I've always had what I call reverse perception, where I'm seeing the finer fields first and the more coarse physical spaces last. And I think that was because of the non-full physical integration with the body.
Yeah, it's I remember being.
I'll just finish that sentence.
Yeah.
Now that I have, and the reason that I might have taken that much time is I didn't lose it. Like I did it so gradually over the course of, that many years, that I didn't lose the full spectrum of awareness when I finally did. You know what I mean? It just occurred so gradually that I was able to keep up with the gradient changes. Because there's a lot of, an immense amount of gradient changes when you're shifting from, non-physical space. into a higher density space, you know, say top of 5D, 6D, right where those touch, you know, into a 3D body. And there's the ones that I came in with, I know that there's at least one consciousness of which who came, you know, from it's in a stasis chamber. I can feel it. It's why I have always been more prone to horizontal than vertical. Vertical is very hard for me. I can't even tell you how hard vertical is for me. And it's because I can feel this being who I am in another space in the stasis chamber, you know, and I automatically just align to that direction.
When you say a chamber, what can you describe that more?
It's in a stasis pod. Yeah.
And okay, yeah. You know, I had it was weird.
And it's on a craft. It's not on a planet. Yeah. So like there's a lot that I've been able to detect, you know, along the way. And if I look in there, I can often, you know, be given the, you know, the visuals of the whole thing.
That is interesting because I was just talking to somebody else from another channel just a few days ago, and I had this just a random consciously aware. I was kind of like, you know how sometimes you have your out of bodies, but maybe you don't have 100% conscious awareness, but you're kind of aware of what's happening. Yeah. And you're kind of downloading the memories and accessing them after, you know, you wake up from in your physical body. But there was just recently where it's almost like I just opened my eyes and woke up in something that looked like a coffin. But in front of me, like I'm laying down, and on the above me, there's like all these little buttons and lights and symbols and numbers and all kinds of. It was very brief. It was really quick, and when I became consciously aware enough that I was in this little kind of unit thing or some kind of coffin or whatever it was, I started kind of freaking out.
Yeah. And
I didn't like being in there. So, you know, just, you know, through my thoughts, I'm just like, okay, you know, let me go back to my body. Let me, you know, go just shift back 100% back to my body and just wake up. Because it was a little uneasy, you know. I didn't like that. That was the only, out of all my out of body experiences, that was the only time where I just kind of found myself kind of locked into some little, you know, like you said, like a pod looking thing or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was very claustrophobic, and I just
that's
I
interesting actually, because your pod's going to be in a higher consciousness space, which means it's not experiencing itself 3D physically. So it sounds like what you experienced was your 3D physical perception of what that was. Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. That would rather be like being in a coffin.
Yes.
I'm in a state of stasis. So I'll describe the pod here in a minute. But I'm in a state of stasis. What's the other word I experience? Stasis to me means, what's a word? Bliss. Bliss would be equivalent, except for it's full body as well. It's not just a consciousness state, it's experienced full body. Yeah. It's absolutely heavenly. It's how I shift, it's how I go into body. I go into stasis. And so I'm everywhere all at once. I can be anywhere that I want to be. I can usually cognize myself as being in as many as 4 or 5 and maybe even 6 different places in that many different bodies, you know, doing different things. And I can somehow take all of that data. I can't always shift all the way back into 3D physical space with it all.
Yeah, understandable.
But I can shift back in with the awareness that it happened and with at least a percentage of the data. Now, with this pod that I'm in, it's gelatinous. It's not physical. It's a very thin gelatinous, clear, absolutely clear material. And inside of this material is a fluid. So yeah, I'm suspended in fluid.
Interesting. Yeah, that is. So do you think that
And there's a hue to it. There's color hues to it too. So I can see the frequencies being used. And there's light also being used from outside the pod. It's interesting. It's almost like a fiber optic. It's like very thin, ephemeral rods that have a light on the end, so sort of like a fiber optic, and they're arranged in such a way beneath the pod that keeps it suspended in air, you know.
Wow, that is really just mind blowing. Yeah, that is. I mean, you're not the first person to kind of describe this either. You know,
No, I'm sure.
I've just myself. I've just see, for me, it's like I've always just liked the idea that my consciousness is here. You know, it's like here in this physical form right now. Like I have, like I understand how people's souls can get fragmented. But like I don't want to believe that. You know, for me, I want to be like in control of my own consciousness and have my higher selves, oversoul, all these different labels and the things words we use to describe stuff. Like I want and feel like it's all with me here. And I'm just, it's not that I know I said earlier, like, it's like we're projecting into this body. But what I meant by that is consciousness shifting and centering just into a particular body on a particular plane, as in that kind of astral. And then, so when I'm like astral projecting, like I feel like lucid dreaming is a form of astral projection, utilizing the dream bodies or, whatever else. Like,
they're identical. Yeah.
I feel like it's all just different types of astral projecting. There's not just.
Here's the thing, an OBE, an astral projection, a lucid dream, a standard dream is all the exact same thing. And yet people can pattern their attention to experience them in very unique ways. So if you don't start out with different things being the same thing, you're always going to end up with an inaccuracy. So all of those are the same thing. They're consciousness, consciousness experiencing itself, and specifically consciousness experiencing itself beyond the 3D earth life, right? That's how we can bring all of those things into a singularity. Okay, when you're in standard dream, you are experiencing yourself somewhere other than 3D physical space, generally, unless you're in your what do I want to say, mind residue, and that's what most people bring back as dreams, but that's not what you're dreaming. That's just the mind residue that you made it back with. That's everything else was so different that you couldn't even shift back into physical space with it. All you're able to shift back into physical space with is anything else that looks like 3D physical space, Yeah. And so they think that's dreaming, and it's like, no, that's only the tiny fraction of what you were just dreaming that you were able to make it back into physical space with.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like some people don't have any recollection at all when they wake up of any even any dreams that they may have had, but everyone is having these experiences.
So if you want to put it all in the same singularity, which is very helpful, by the way, until we start producing the level playing fields, you won't get the merger of all of the frequencies. You'll always have something over here and something else over here. And the whole idea is to flip that the other way around and get them all occurring all at once. And you can only do that by creating the level playing field. So we experience ourselves here in the 3D earth life, and in the dream state, the standard dream state, and the lucid dream state, and what we call astral projection, which is the same thing as the lucid dream state, and an out-of-body experience, we're experiencing ourselves somewhere other than 3D earth life, okay? And that's how they're all the same. Now, let that awareness seep into every cell in your body and watch your patterns, watch the kaleidoscope begin to change on the way you see things and what more you've just allowed yourself to be aware of. People are afraid to shift their patterns. People are in holding patterns like you wouldn't believe. We have to become fearless when it comes to shifting our patterns, and being able to stand in someone else's perception, literally looking out through their eyes at ourselves. Until we can do that, we have no answers.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
We just have hyperbole.
No, that's true. All these
conjecture.
labels and whatnot, all labels and things, and but it's hard though, because when we're trying to express ourselves, express our experiences to other people, we tend to use like certain words and labels and just kind of like for communication purposes, but yeah, I believe like there's different forms of astral projection, there's different planes. I'm not sure if you said that. I think you were saying that the dream plane is like its own plane, correct? Like a regular dream is its own how would you say? I mean, I just consider our subconscious mind as like something where like our subconscious mind to me is super powerful. And as you know, like a subconscious mind is, what is it, like 1,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind or something, or something like that. But like our subconscious mind is so powerful that, while our physical body is sleeping, it has the ability to entertain consciousness and to create dream simulations and create all these different various dreams. Like for me, every time I go to sleep at night, as I hit the REM cycles, I have like 2 or 3 dreams around 3 a.m. Then there's no dreaming. And then there's another round of dreams that are a little more vivid as the REM kicks in more, as you get a deeper sleep. And then a few dreams go by, and then there's nothing. And then I get to like more of those really vivid dreams where I'm becoming more lucid in those dreams. And that's typically like 5 a.m., 5:30, maybe 6 a.m. after about 6 or 7 hours of sleep.
Those aren't different dreams, they're different brainwave patterns.
So
or what we could just call different patterns. So your viewing spaces with different patterns. So there's the beta, the alpha, the theta, the delta, the gamma, and whatever else we've come up with, right? Those are the waves.
Yes.
And when we're experiencing through the wave or the pattern of attention that we call beta, we visually see things, as separate from each other. The bed is over here and my table is over here, and there's space in between. It's a fascinating thing when you start letting yourself, with your conscious state of attention, experiencing the various other waves. Because in the alpha wave, and here we start getting into the work that I'm doing with the crystal, and I'm trying to show people through this, once we get past beta into the alphas, there's less space between one thing and another thing. Okay, and so through the crystal, this will look like 2 faces overlapping, sharing an eye, instead of there being one being here and another here with space in between.
I understand, yeah.
Right? Okay, when I get into the theta waves, I can do that too. I'll show a single face, but in that single face, you can see a lot of beings coming through it.
That makes sense, actually.
Through the identical space. And when we get into the deltas, this shifts into something that we are almost so wholly unfamiliar with as visual beings that it's very hard to word, and I don't find much benefit going into dialogue on that. I would have to experience it much more than I do. Like yourself, I generally don't go into that. I go into it, but I'm not gonna, you know what happens there? Communication. What's the hardest thing to bring back from our OBEs into physical space? Freaking communication, dialogue. What the heck was just said? You're in these fascinating states, learning all of this stuff about the universe, the cosmos, the physical body, how everything is in your totally understanding. You're like, whoa, yeah, no, that's so easy. Yeah, now I'm remembering. You shift back into physical space and it's gone. That's
yeah, it
that's
can,
that
yeah.
delta. That's that delta wave. It's a non-visual thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and I may be saying right now that it's communication. It's, you know, not just that. It's just that that's easy to understand, that communication itself isn't a visual thing. And it would be very hard to shift myself into communication itself to see what it is. You know, I might begin visualizing, you know, certain things like zeros and ones and, you know, mathematical formulations or things like that. Whatever, you know, happens, that's just what happened when I just said it. But going into the non-visual space and understanding it non-visually doesn't give us much wiggle room to actually vocalize what that is. I mean, because vocalization itself, you know, is a visualization technique. I mean, vocals and visuals are inherently linked.
Do you think, at least from your own perspective, do you think that some of these people who have these NDEs, near-death experiences, and they see, you know, they see a tunnel of light, a portal, et cetera, beings, do you think that when people are initially, their body is actually dead, do you think that they're going into their etheric body at that time?
No,
During that
no,
transition period?
they're popping way out. Yeah. No, they're going, I would say, into the life between life area. And, you know, from the life in between life area, they often like to visit the Akash, angelic realms. You know, and I have no idea why, because if people knew what the angelic realms were, that's like scary to me, you know.
Maybe would you like to dive into that a little bit?
Well,
And talk
maybe on
about,
the next talk, because
okay,
I have a time limit today, but we
yeah,
can
that's
have,
fine.
you know, more of these talks if you like. We should maybe pick a subject and dive into the subject, one subject in more detail, and have multiple talks to cover everything rather than what we did today. But this was nice, and just getting to know you and some of your experience and all of that. I would like to actually know a little bit more about your experience before the next time we did a talk, you know, so we
Yeah, yeah.
lay something out that would be interesting and that we both have experience in and all that.
Oh, and yeah, we'll figure some neat video idea in the near future, and I think it'll do great, and that would be really awesome and fun to do. So
Very fun. And
yeah,
I even have a topic. I'll send it to you.
okay, that sounds perfect. And
I'll
I
see
want
what
to
you think.
at some point in the future dig more deeper into the ETs, the crystal connection, all those types of things too, because I'm very interested in that. But all right, well, I'll let you go. Looks like you definitely have to take care of other things. So
Yeah.
all right,
All right,
talk
Jamie.
to you soon. Bye.
Right. Night night.
You too. Bye.